Okay, thank you. Well, for any of members of the public or any of our applicants who have joined us, we're going to start our paneling for the Indiana Arts Commission. Just a reminder, this is a public meeting of the Indiana Arts Commission. We're dealing with Region 10 today and our regional initiative grants, both APS and AOS. Today is Wednesday, April 22nd, 2020 at 9 a.m. and we are recording this, so you want to make sure you know that. Just a brief mention, many of you who are attending these now that we are doing these electronically through Zoom and other technologies, one of the challenges is that the panelists, we're all on little screens on our little computers, oftentimes in our own homes. And while we often used to be able to take a sip from our Diet Mountain Dew or eat a bit of our ho-hos, while we were having this and no one would really notice, you're going to be watching folks in their own homes. So please cut everybody a little bit of slack as we try to do this electronically. We want people to feel as comfortable as possible. And we are so glad you're with us today. Our regional arts partner for Region 10 is the Arts Council of Southwestern Indiana, and Ann McKim, I'll let her introduce herself in just a minute, has facilitated, along with the staff from the Indiana Arts Commission, this panel today. And we really welcome all of you. To start this, what we're going to do is I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves. I'm going to go in order of what I'm seeing on my screen. That way we won't talk over each other. And then we'll have our staff do so as well. So let's see here. Linda, would you like to start out? And be sure to unmute yourself and then mute yourself back when you get started.
Hello, I'm Linda Bowles. I'm the gallery director of the Hoosier Salon in New Harmony, Indiana.
And so nice to have you here. And then Annie, why don't you do the next introduction? And you are still muted, dear.
Okay, am I good?
There you go, just lean into that computer.
Okay, no, it was on mute, but I didn't do it, so it's been jumping back and forth. I'm Ann Dowie. I'm a retired art teacher, and I help with the education committee in Evansville with the Arts Commission.
That's wonderful, thanks so much. And then Joe, why don't you go next?
I'm Joe Atkinson. I'm an assistant professor of communication at the University of Evansville and documentary filmmaker and theater person.
There we go. Thanks, Joe. And finally, Robert.
Hello, my name is Robert Nichols, and I'm Director of Music at First Presbyterian Church in Evansville, Indiana.
And I might add, the only opinion I'll add today, I'm the best organist I've ever had the opportunity to listen to. My name's Scott Wiley. I direct the volunteer lawyer program in Southwestern Indiana, and I am general counsel for the Indiana Arts Commission, and actually a former arts partner like Ann is now. So why don't we have Ann, why don't you introduce yourself and just speak briefly about the Arts Council, and then we'll have our IAC staff introduce themselves.
Good morning. I'm Ann McKim. I'm the Executive Director of the Arts Council of Southwestern Indiana. We're located in Evansville, but we serve the 10-county region that makes up Region 10 for the IAC. The Arts Council is an umbrella organization, so pretty much anything that impacts the cultural or artistic landscape of our community, we're in one way or another interested in supporting, enhancing, providing resources to, or just hanging out with. The Arts Council's website is www.artswin.org, and all of our information, all of our programming, all of which is virtual right now, can be found there, along with contact information for how to get involved with us.
Great, thanks so much, Ann. And just for any of our applicants or members of the public who are with us, the role of an arts partner locally is far beyond doing these panels for granting. They provide technical assistance and do all kinds of other things promoting the work of the Indiana Arts Commission. So if you have any questions about the Arts Commission and the work, the various programs that are available both for private artists and for arts organizations and individuals doing arts projects, going to Ann's website and checking that out is a great way to do it. And before they kind of disappear, unless we need their help, I thought we'd have our Indiana Arts Commission staff introduce themselves today.
Paige, I don't think we can hear you. Nope. We can see you. We can't hear you. Let
Well,
me
that's a
see.
dream for me.
I think she waved us on. Is that correct, Paige? Okay. That's Paige. I'm Brett. I'm the tech guy today. So just let me know if you have any technology issues.
Great, thank you, Brett. And Paige Sharp is on the line with us in some form, and she'll go in and out, I'm sure. She is our staff person from the Indiana Arts Commission as we go through this process. So let me tell you a bit about how this is going to work if you are listening from home, so they speak. What we're going to do is we will go through each application. We have a panel now, the 9 o'clock panel. We have another panel later this morning. The panel will go through this morning. We will do the application. We'll have a first reader. That's a person that is in charge of kind of doing the first review of the evaluation of the criteria that's been applied to the grant application. And then we have a second reader who will add complementary comments and or contradictory comments. We don't want to be repetitive. If I say something like, oh, bless your heart, but that's already been said. That just means you're talking too much and we need to keep going. The idea is to provide as good and appropriate constructive criticism so that people can be better grant writers and do better in their future grants. We'll open up after the first and second readers do their part and have any additional discussion from other members of the panel. Sometimes we have additional discussion, sometimes we don't. If you're an applicant and you're at home and people talk a lot about your application or they don't talk at all about your application, don't take that as any indication of anything other than either it's been well reviewed or other things. If someone says you're the best thing ever, you may not be. If someone says you're the worst thing ever, you're probably not. And everyone has different opinions. So you'll want to listen and get input. And then if you have questions after the panel, you can do that. Just a reminder to our folks who are attending as guests, members of the public, or as applicants, that there is no role for you today other than to listen. There is no communication. Please refrain from any attempt to contact or speak with any members of the panel. We're, of course, dealing with taxpayer money from the fine taxpayers in the Hoosier State, and we want to be as transparent and as appropriate as we can possibly be. So, you can't do things like this, during the session. You can't, you just really can't. So don't think we're keeping you out or we're not wanting your participation. That was always one of the real challenges when I was in Ann's position is oftentimes members of the panel know applicants, or at least board members or other folks, and we'd have someone come in and give a panelist a hug. Blessedly through Zoom, we won't have those issues today, although I'm waiting till I can hug each and every one of our panelists, hopefully sometime in the near future. So with that, I'm going to have to pull up my list in a minute, Ann. So is there any way, oh wait, look, oh, Brett's moving his finger.
Yeah, I didn't know how to get your attention. So I have had a few questions about your screen not being under your control once I'm sharing my screen. So that typically means that you're in Zoom full screen. So if you go up to the top of your keyboard and push the escape button, that should take your Zoom meeting out of full screen, and other windows should be available to you then.
Well, there we go. I think I've done that.
Does that make sense? Okay.
I'm going to go, well, I've just got to go get my exit full screen. There we go. There you go. I just have to go get our list.
That's totally fine. So just so our panelists know, you can have your applications up on one side of your screen and the Zoom meeting up on the other side now that you've exited the full screen. So any other issues, just shoot them my way. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. And Ann, can you tell me who our first person is while I look for our list?
I also have the list up on the screen now. I'm sorry.
Oh, there we go. That's going to be even better now. There we go. Here we go. Okay.
Although, Scott, the symphonic band application is not being reviewed.
Well, that's what we already said. So there we go.
Yeah,
So we are going to be going for now Actors Community Theater. That will be our first thing. And who is the first reader on that?
I am.
Go ahead, Joe. You're on.
Okay. Well, the Actors Community Theater application, I'll start off with the comments on the artistic quality section. I noted in my comments that the fact that they're creating workshops around the needs of the specific productions and engaging the community in those seems like a very strong point. I'm glad that they included that, and I'm glad they talked about that. They indicated that in those workshops, they're bringing in guest artists. Sorry, I keep looking over here because I'm on a two-screen setup here. They indicated that they are bringing in guest artists that are selected by the events committee in order to run those workshops. One of the things that I would have liked to have known is where those guest artists are coming from, or do they have sort of a group of people that are recycled year after year after year, or is that something where they're bringing in outside talent and bringing people in from outside the community? I think knowing that, especially if they are doing something like that, could have strengthened my view of that part of the application. That is the majority of what I talked about under the artistic quality. I mostly stuck to sort of the constructive critique idea as opposed to saying how well something was done. So if I don't talk about it, it was probably done well, in my opinion. Under the second section, the IDEA, community engagement and IDEA. One of the things that I also wondered was, is there a broader community engagement strategy in selecting the productions? They indicate that formal and informal conversations happen, but if there is another form of outreach that they're doing specifically to engage the community in choosing productions, I would have liked to have known that, as well as to look at, they talk about the efforts that with engaging with La Familia, the local Latino festival in order to reach out. I thought that was great. Loved hearing that. Wanted to know if there were any more efforts along those lines to engage other underserved populations and things that they were doing specifically in terms of outreach to other populations. And under project management, the only real thing that I wondered that I think could have been included. We know that Heath does a lot of things as the director and is staffed with a lot of these things. Exactly how much help from board and committee meetings comes into that, how many people involved in that, knowing that would help give a better understanding of how manageable this is going to be with the amount of staffing that is there. Back to you, Scott.
There we go. Thank you so much, Joe. And Anne's sending me the first and second reader list, and I've got to go to my email and grab it. But who is second reader on this one?
I believe I am the second reader on this one.
There we go, Robert. Then I will turn it over to you, my friend.
In general, I thought it was a very strong application. I made a note that a number of the events, the dinner events, are not open to those under the age of 18. And I think I'm right in saying that there were 2 of those each year. I'm just trying to check in on that. So it's a fairly significant proportion of the events which they're doing, which are not open to a significant age group. I had a comment in the project management. I know nothing about I had only what there was to read. I asked, please tell us more about the experience of the president of the ACT board, and to please tell us a little bit more about the makeup of the board, the committee, the personnel, their years of service, their experience as board members, as it's useful to see the organization in place behind the leader and how that whole section functions.
Okay, great. Now what we'll do is we'll open it up to any members of the panel who would like to add any additional information. So Linda or Annie, any comments for either of the 2 of you? And be sure to unmute if you want to add anything.
The only thing I had that wasn't already spoken about was that in the quality section, it asks about how past experiences informed this year's choices, and there wasn't really anything about that. That's all I had. Everything else, I pretty much agree with the others.
Great, thanks so much, Anne. That was great. Linda, you want to add anything on this one?
I don't have anything to add.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'm going to give each of the panelists a bit of time now to see if they want to go in and do anything with their scores. And one of the things in the process is after the listening to all of the comments and the discussion, the panelists then have the opportunity to finalize their scores for the application. And if everybody wants to give me a thumbs up when they're done, I'll keep my eye on each of you. Oh, Anne's fancy. There we go. Great.
Scott, I have a quick question.
Go ahead and ask.
If we do make a change or add something to our comments as a result of what we hear, do we then need to save that in our evaluations? I'm presuming yes.
I'm going to assume yes, but this will be one of the times that we may ask Brett to unmute his thing and confirm that for us.
I think I might defer to Paige on this one. I think Paige is unmuted now and she might be able to join us.
Here we go.
Potentially. Well, I can't hear her, so I'm going to say yes. I'll make
Okay,
that
there we
call
go.
as we should update those in the system and make sure those are saved. And if that's not correct, I will hear about it later.
There we go, Robert. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay. While Robert hits save, we're going to get quite sick of Joe in the next because he's the first reader on our next two. So our next one is the Warrick County Public Education Foundation. And Joe, you're first reader on that again.
Somebody made some very poor decisions in assigning first readership, but you know, here we go. And actually, you won't get as sick of me in this one. I don't have a lot to say about this. I thought this was a strong application.
I'm sorry, can you give me a moment to find it?
Absolutely.
Because I have to go back through the dashboard to, and I'm not quite sure how to do that, navigating the Arts Commission website.
Scott, shall we do a song and dance number?
Just a moment. Sorry, we're looking at the Warrick Public Education Foundation?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Just a moment. Okay, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, go ahead, Joe.
Again, I don't have a ton to say here because I think that this was a very strong application. Under the artistic quality, the main comment that I had was that I was very encouraged to see the applicant engaging audiences and student participants in a formal way in determining the types of shows that are done through this program. I think that speaks to looking at, they talk about kind of what it has done well in past years, and they talk about having a formal process for how to engage people in deciding the next year, which I think is terrific, and I'm glad that they included that in the application. Under community engagement and inclusion, diversity, equity, access, based on the application, it looks like they are reaching out to people of all ages, and geographically they're reaching well beyond Warrick County. I was very glad to see that, and very glad that they included that they were going beyond the immediate area. The one question that I did have, and the one thing that I would like to see them include is, are there specific outreaches to different underserved communities? They mentioned essentially that they don't close the door to them, that, oh, we're inclusive of everyone that comes in, which is fantastic. But are there specific outreaches? And if there are, I'd like to see those included in the application. I think that would strengthen what they're talking about here. And at the same time, that they are also looking at those, looking to other communities to encourage participation, whether it is in selecting the shows, whether it is in the types of shows that they're selecting, again, to just bring in, to make a conscious effort to bring in those underserved communities and how they're going about doing that if they are. Finally, under the last section, the project management, I really didn't have any questions at all. Clearly, they've done this many times. The staffing, you know, they outlined pretty clearly who's doing this and what they're doing, and it made sense to me. So, yeah, that aspect I didn't have much to say about. Scott?
Great, thank you so much. And our second reader on this one, I think, is Andy Dowie. And you're still muted. There we go. There we go. Welcome back.
Thank you. In terms of the engagement is the only, well, I had some basic questions. There isn't any mention of why there are student fees or individual costs to the students who are participating. And this, I wondered if the students got school credit for production. I thought that waiving the fee or providing and arranging for transportation might make it easier for low-income students and might increase the engagement for a more diverse population. A lot of the low-income kids might want to participate in that summer project and not be able to get there. So that's the only thing that I was thinking about. I'm good.
There we go. So do any other members of the panel have any questions or any comments on this application? Robert's good. Linda, you good?
I just wanted to say I agree with Joe. I think this is a very strong application. And
Great, thanks so much. With that, we don't have any
I
conflict.
think Robert has something he's trying to say, but he's
Oh,
muted.
Robert, I thought you were saying, okay, go ahead, Robert.
No, I was saying I'd like to say something, echoing Joe, what Joe said about my suggestion was that it would be beneficial to see actual, in such a detailed submission, it'd be helpful to see actual recorded numbers of underserved populations who've attended in the past. And that way they would know if their outreach attempts are working. And it would be helpful to have some kind of metric that they might be able to develop beyond numbers in attendance to know if they're reaching the audience that they're hoping for. And lastly, I suggested, I wondered if it might be possible to go into a bit more detail about what they're working on at the various monthly meetings. It was a little bit vague, like, well, we're going to have a monthly meeting, but it might be quite useful for panelists to be able to read, and at this monthly meeting, we address this, and at this monthly meeting, we address that. Just a little bit more detail. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Robert. Anybody else got any comments? Okay, if not, we'll give everybody a few minutes to adjust their scores if they need to, and we'll be moving on to the USI Outreach and Engagement panel for the New Harmony Gallery next. If you want to start bringing that up on your screen once you get your stuff in, and when you guys are ready, just let me know and we'll move on to the next application.
Hey, everybody. I wanted to mention about the question that Robert had.
Go right ahead.
Okay, cool. I wasn't sure if you heard me. I switched to phone audio. This is like the most whack job experience. Anyway, if you change any of the comments in your comment box and you scroll down to the bottom of the screen and hit save, then you're ensured that they will save, but more than likely they should automatically save, but that'll bring you back to the original screen with all the scores.
Great, thank you, thank you, thank you. We get an actual answer. So we were indecisive earlier. Just one thing to do, and the next grant application, of course, this is the other one that we have a conflict, which is for Anne. And so Anne is going to get placed now into Zoom. The separate Zoom room where she's separated will not participate in this conversation or this scoring of this application. So as soon as we have her in the separate Zoom room, we'll go forward with the USI Outreach and Engagement for the Gallery of Contemporary Art. And I'm going to depend on Anne and or one of our IAC staff folks. There we go.
So it's Anne, correct, that needs to be moved?
Yep, Anne needs to be
Okay,
moved into the
perfect.
Zoom room.
Anne, I'm just going to put you in a waiting room and everything will be okay. Okay, she is in the waiting room, so we are free to move forward. I am going to admit one person from the public now, and you should be good to go.
That's great. Brett, thank you so much for all the help you're giving us today. Our next applicant is USI Outreach and Engagement, the New Harmony Gallery of Contemporary Art, which is part of USI's Outreach Department. The first reader on that, again, is Joe. This last one, I think he's first reader on, and then I think Robert's second reader on this, so I'll turn it over to Joe.
Thank you, Scott. The first thing that I noted on this application is that under artistic quality, just as a reader, it took a while and it was very thorough at the beginning, but felt like it took me a pretty long time to get to what the actual program is. There was kind of some generic description early, and I would have liked to have seen that description and knowing what I was reading earlier in the process. We, again, eventually got there. But I think it would strengthen their application if it was just, if we didn't have to wait quite so far before we knew exactly what we were reading about. But that really is the only thing that I had. The diversity of experiences that they mentioned in the grant application is impressive. And I think that that spoke to a strong application. Under the community engagement and inclusion, diversity, equity, access section, while they discussed bringing in student artist work and indicate that schools are welcome to plan field trips, I would again be interested to know what, if any, direct outreach there is to encourage such participation, to try and to actually reach out to schools. The same goes for underserved communities. Is there a plan for direct outreach to encourage participation? I think if there is, some specific details of what that is, and like Robert mentioned earlier, metrics to measure how that sort of thing would play out and how it's working would be good. I do think that it helps or strengthened to me the case. I applaud the organization for attempting to bring in diverse work and diverse voices through their exhibition choices. Was very glad to see that, but would like to see them reaching, to know if there are outreaches to those communities as well to bring them in. The other area that I noted missing was community input into bringing in the exhibitions. Are there opportunities for the community members to participate in the selection process? That if there are, I would like to see those outlined as well. And that was all that I had under that section. Finally, under project management, I'm curious how many individuals are actually available for installation. There was kind of a statement that, well, we have the USI people who can come in and do this. But I'd like to know, A, what is sort of the process for and schedule for putting up and taking down exhibits? What's the timeline that you're allowing yourself to do that, and what is the manpower that is available? So just a little bit more detail in the schedule, I think, would have strengthened their case.
Great, thanks so much, Joe. And Robert, your second reader on this one.
Thank you, Scott. Great analysis from Joe. I echoed quite a bit of that in my comments. I wondered, I thought it would be helpful to see numbers of how underserved populations have attended in previous years. So an actual metric of seeing how many underserved people are coming. And they have a hope for that, again, not many metrics on how more diverse populations are being reached through publicity and measured in attendance, but they didn't mention a way that they were actually going to do that. And I thought down in the bottom section, in terms of the whole finances of the organization, I thought it would be helpful to see how the project and the grant request, once we got to it, fits into the overall budget of the New Harmony Gallery of Contemporary Art. We were definitely only seeing the grant application, but not how it fits into the organization as a whole. And I felt as a panelist that it'd be useful to see just a little bit more financial detail of how this is fitting in. And I wish them well in their search for a new gallery director. Thank you.
Kindness on top of actual evaluation. That's what makes the Indiana Arts Commission so wonderful. So what we're going to do now is obviously, Linda, you want to say anything because you're the other panelist?
I don't have anything else to say. I'm right next door to them, so I don't really have a conflict of interest because, I mean, I do share not really a hallway, I guess, with them, a bathroom area with them, but I don't deal with any of their intricate details. But I thought this was an overall strong application, and I agree with both Joe and Robert and what they said about the underserved community. So
That's great. That's great. And, you know, blessedly, you're up next as a first reader, so we get to actually hear you sub next. So I'm going to give Joe, Linda, and Robert a bit of time to finalize their score and do that before we invite Ann to come back. We'll be moving on to the Vincennes University Shircliff Gallery next, if you want to start pulling that up when you get done with finalizing your scores.
and we need to bring Ann back too.
Yeah. Now, once you guys, are you done with your scoring?
Oh,
Good for you. Joe's good. Robert, let me know when you're good, and then we'll. Okay, there we go. Brett, we can go ahead and bring you back now.
She is joining us here. It's thinking.
It's not easy to get back from Zoom purgatory.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Maybe. Anne, can you hear us? There she is on video. Anne, can you give us a thumbs up that you can hear us? Oh, perfect. Okay.
did you have a nice rest, Ann?
There we go. Okay. Welcome back, and we assigned you to be first reader of all the remaining grants while you were in the Zoom room. Just to let us know, our next application, if you need to bring it up, we're going to be looking at Vincennes University's Shircliff Gallery. And Linda is the first reader on this one, and Joe is second on this. So Linda, I'll turn it over to you.
And this is my first time of being first reader ever, so bear with me, but I've had some good examples with Joe and I guess it was Joe, really. So I think with the artistic quality, I think their examples were great. The exhibit space looked great to me. The only thing that I would want to point out to them is one of the links, the Joe Page link that I copied and pasted didn't work for me. I had to just go to his website on my own. So I just wanted to let them know that. Moving on to community engagement. I think this is a well implemented and thought out process. It's clear that they're making efforts to provide access to individuals already interested in attending exhibitions. But I was wondering if they're striving to increase access to include the underserved communities. That's all I had there. I thought their timeline for the project management and the budget seemed very reasonable. And I think overall this was a strong application.
Great, thanks so much. And Joe, you're second reader on this, so unmute and go at it.
Sure. The first thing actually I noted was that in the the IDEA section, the community engagement section, is that if anything, the participation number that they gave seems low. From what I can tell, it does not include audience members who will be engaged by the events and participation. I may have read that wrong, and if I did, I apologize. But when I read that, I thought that adding that number and adding that engagement from the community would actually strengthen their application because it's going to bring that number higher. So that was one thing I agree with comments about the looking to get more or speak specifically to how they're engaging outside organizations and that sort of thing. I agree with Linda on that. And the only other comment that I had was that while the list of events is laid out clearly, the planning process, at what point they choose the season, how they plan for and execute each event, that's not clearly laid out. So I think that would be something that would be useful to know in gauging their evaluation.
Great, thanks so much. So at this point, do any other members of the panel want to add comments or provide anything else? Robert or Annie? Robert, go right ahead.
Thank you. I thought it might be helpful for the organization to identify and name underserved populations and how specifically they were going to attempt to reach out to them and expose them to the exhibitions of the gallery. In other words, they have working very hard on diversity in the exhibiting artists, but it would be great to, and they get feedback from the people who come. It would be very good to read about experiences from their more diverse audience. There were a couple of technical things which I spotted. The project start date and the project end date need to be carefully, they're a year behind, up in the very beginning of the application. It would be really helpful, I thought, to have the date and time of at least one workshop artist-led community demo, instead of them all being listed to be determined. Maybe the first one in the season could be worked out and nailed down so that we have a sense of when they're going to be. Again, one other small technical thing, the reception artist talk by one of the people is more than a week after the exhibit closes. I think that's just a typo, but maybe an encouragement to check on all of those dates and technical parts. And the final comment that I had was actually about the program itself, and I don't know if this is appropriate to say, but consider having the reception and artist talks at times when more people in the general public might be able to attend. Apart from the student exhibitions, all of the receptions are in the middle of the day during the working week, when the average working person is unavailable to meet with the artist. I think they were all either noon or 11 a.m. on a Tuesday or a Thursday or a Friday. And that really does exclude a lot of people. And I felt that having that information made me really think, well, so many people wouldn't be able to attend those, and it'd be really nice to have either an additional hour, maybe in the evening on the same day, when the general public, the working public could attend and be part of the exhibit. Thank you.
Great. And you want to add anything? Oh, you're muted still.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Basically, I agreed with most of the comments. I really enjoyed the last comment about, I didn't notice that it was in the middle of the day, and that's a great comment. I know a lot of schools do that for the students, but it's hard for the community. That's it.
Great, thanks. So any other comments? Okay, if not, we'll let all our panelists go ahead and finalize their scores. We'll be moving on next to the Northwest Territory Arts Guild after this. So if you want to pull that one up after you get your scores, and give me a thumbs up. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Annie. As soon as Joe gets back from wherever he snuck off, I bet his phone rang. Why don't we go ahead and do this? We'll do this one when Joe gets back, and then we'll take a quick break if anybody needs to do a quick bathroom break or anything. Here he is. Okay, so, and Robert, you are still unmuted. So on this one, for our next one, which is the Northwest Territory Arts Guild, Linda, you are the first reader on that, and then I think, Annie, you're the second reader on this one. So go right ahead.
Looks like Robert is unmuted. I guess that, I don't know if that matters, but
You're good.
anyway, I just wanted to apologize that I'm looking at two different screens, so if it looks like I'm not looking at you actually talking, that's why. On the artistic quality application on this end, I have that examples of public art I thought were quality art. I know this is a new program, so they couldn't give any kind of examples of what they're thinking to have in this particular application. But I thought their examples were really good. And I like the inclusion of the story of the children in their example. It was a strong statement. So if they continue with that in this particular grant, that I think that would be good. The project goals and the planning are very detailed and thought out. And I thought the social media and the web presence examples were current and very good. And then in the community engagement, I have the feedback in the coming years will be helpful to measure the success of this project. And it looks as though the audience will be consulted to make sure they are being served in this project. The fact that this project has many collaborations with other organizations, I think the community, and it'll make engaging within community it makes it very strong. The fact that this project will be by invitation or call to artist opens up to many different artists. I think that's a good thing. I think it's better than just having like one person pick, you know, what's going on. The staff looks well-versed and qualified. It seems like a huge undertaking, so I hope that they can pull this off. The new project, as a new project, the total audience seems possible yet ambitious, and the timeline seems reasonable. The finances looked in order, and someone's done a great job with the in-kind donations. I think this overall is a strong application.
Great, thank you, Linda. And then our second reader on this one's Annie. And just unmute and go at it.
In terms of quality, I thought it was great at bringing more work into public spaces. It's difficult and expensive to do. And it's kind of a non-threatening way to do it. Nobody has to go into a gallery. They're just walking downtown. And one thing that I thought might be helpful is to have some short explanations that were labeling the piece somehow other than the artist's work to better inform new viewers. Sculpture is often ignored in galleries because it's difficult to install and it's expensive to get there. So I think it's a great way to increase exposure to this form. In terms of community engagement, I thought it was a very thorough grant overall and well thought out. The sculptures will be on the art walk, which is why I think you notice that there's a lot of involvement of other people because it's downtown. And it said that it would be expanded if they found that it worked well, so they might expand it into more diverse neighborhoods, which I think would help. In terms of management, I thought it was very organized. Again, I thought the timeline was ambitious, but it might be that the date was wrong because it talked about what they did in 2019 and 2020, but it sounded like the actual exhibition was going to be in 2021, but it wasn't noted. So I'm not sure whether they were trying for this coming August, which would be very ambitious, or if they were doing all this work and it was going to happen in 2021. So that's all I have.
Great, thanks so much. Gentlemen, do you have any comments that you want to add to the to this application? Oh, both of you. Okay, Robert, you go first, then Joe.
My only comment was that they mentioned a number of underserved local populations, and I wondered if it is going, if they might have put into the application about how they're going to reach count, serve, and have the seasonal workers acknowledged in the process. As they were mentioned in the application, but then kind of left out of how they would be exposed and counted and acknowledged in the process once the art was in place.
Great, thanks, Robert. Joe?
I had a couple of comments. First, this was an extremely thorough application, and at times, I actually found myself struggling to keep track of all of the acronyms that were in it in order to kind of go back and figure out what they were talking about. And I don't know that I have a suggestion for improving that. I just that was something that I found myself dealing with as I was going through it. I agree with Linda's assessment that the number served seems ambitious. 45,000 people roughly between adults and children in a county of 17,000 people. That feels like a really big number. I'm not saying it's unachievable, but I do wonder if that counts some people multiple times because they participated in different events multiple times when looking at how they arrived at that number. That was something that I was curious about. I also wanted to see how they came up with some of the numbers in terms of the budget. Part of the budget was made up of number of artists applying and fees coming in from those artists applying. I would have liked to have seen how they arrived at that estimate as to how many artists would apply, so that and how they got that number budget wise, so that again to just better understand where this funding is coming from and why they believe this many people will apply and that they're going to bring in this kind of money for that. So I think that would have also been helpful.
Great, thanks so much, guys. Anybody else want to make any comments? Okay, so why don't we do this? It is according to it's now 9:50, so we've been on, panelists have been on for about an hour and 20 minutes. Why don't we take a 5-minute break? Go ahead and finalize your scores, check your phone, go to the bathroom, have a ho-ho if you've got any. I've got my Diet Mountain Dew, grab a snack. So let's come back in 5 minutes and we'll be moving on then to Old Town Players. And Robert and Linda are our readers on that one. So take your break and finalize your scores, and we'll be back in 5 minutes, and I'll hold us to that real close.
Scott,
Yes, someone's coming in.
I have a question.
Ask.
I couldn't figure out how to get back to my my change it. Do I have to leave the meeting, you know, when I go back to my dashboard because I can't find it to change something?
That would require someone who's not a 56-year-old Luddite to be able to answer that. So I'm going to leave that to Brett or Paige to either send you in the chat box or open up their thing and tell you.
Okay.
And what's the issue exactly?
Well, I want to go back and change something on one of my applicants, and I can't figure out how to get off this screen. I have clicked the minus thing and the...
Oh, so you're on the Zoom, so you have a full screen on the Zoom?
No, I have just a little panel on the side. And
Okay.
I have the meeting, you know, the IAC stuff, the order of the events.
If you go up to your keyboard and you press the escape button, ESC.
Okay. And then how do I get back?
It should, once you push escape, it should just minimize it to a smaller window.
Great.
So you can still hear us and see us. It'll just be a smaller screen.
Okay. All right, I'll try it. And escape and nothing happened. I'm not getting any response, but what I'll do is just go back afterward and change after I get out of Zoom completely.
So what are you seeing on your screen right now?
The application review order, which is very big.
Okay.
And I have the vision of the different participants on the right-hand side, very small.
And you've pushed the escape button?
I have. 3 times.
Okay. So if you go down to the bottom, like tool plant panel, where like the icons show up.
Where it says participants in chat.
No, if you go, like it's on your desktop.
I can't get back to my desktop. That's the problem. And I didn't want to get out of Zoom because I thought it would take too long to get back in.
So don't leave the meeting, that's for sure.
Okay.
However,
Just wait and change things afterwards. I made notes.
Are you on a
I'm on a regular top.
Windows based? You can do Control Tab and flip to another screen. To hit Control and hold that down and then hit tab, it'll open up, it'll go to another screen that you have open.
I did that. Nothing happened. I think I'm just frozen here.
I think you're frozen, yeah.
Yeah.
So you should be able to escape, but there's no way.
I'll just leave it and come back and change my things. I've made notes.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to take my break now, so I'll be right back.
You too.
Annie, I love the new mood lighting. That's cool.
I was getting such a glare that I couldn't stand looking at myself. So we'll make you dark. It'll be the nighttime look.
Looks great. Okay, once Robert gets back, we'll resume. For those of you who are getting ready, the next one we'll be working on is the Old Town Players. Robert's the first reader on that, so we have to wait for him anyway. For those of you in our listening audience, thank you for being with us today, and we hope you are enjoying the panel that we're doing. We have 3 more applications to do during this panel, and then we'll be having our second panel later this morning. And Robert is back, so we'll let him get oriented. Robert's back, we'll let him get oriented and get his stuff ready. And Brett's back as well. That's great. So on the next one we're going to be doing, welcome back. Oh wait, Robert's still muted. Okay, Robert, you are not coming through with sound. You're only coming through visually. There you go.
Unfortunately, Zoom won't open anymore. It's like it's frozen somewhere.
Well, we've got you.
I've lost it. I guess I don't need to.
So if you can't see the screen,
oh, there we are. All set.
Perfect. Okay.
For some reason.
Okay.
We did not want him to miss Annie's mood lighting.
Okay, so the next one's Old Town Players, and Robert, actually, you are the first reader on this one, so you are up. As soon as you pull that up, just let us know.
Thank you. My main comments were in the community engagement section. I wondered if it might be possible to see more work put into reaching out to minorities, their presence in publicity materials and website pictures. If the Old Town Players are putting effort into reaching minorities as part of the open auditions, they might let us know as readers about how they do that in their selection process. And follow-up of the project could include more information on the diversity of the cast and crew as a result of their efforts. It would also be good to read about the crew and other volunteers and how they're chosen by the artistic director based on experience, theatre involvement, and reaching out to include new volunteers who have no experience. So on reading how they went about reaching, they were looking for people who already had experience, but I didn't get a sense of that they were also trying to reach people who didn't have experience and how they could get that. new experience. There were some technical things in the financial area. Please make sure numbers add up correctly and are clear in the summary boxes, as there were discrepancies. The admissions income for the event seemed very high at $9,500 compared to the income and expense balance sheet provided from the previous year, where the income ranged between $1,500 and $4,600 per event. So it seemed way, way higher, like 3 times higher they were expecting the admissions, and I just queried that. And apart from that, thank you.
Great, thanks, Robert. And Linda is our second reader on this one. So Linda, unmute and you're next.
Okay, I just had one comment in the artistic section. I think it was the YouTube video link. When I clicked on it, it said oops. So I think that that was not good to have an example that you couldn't actually see. It could have been, if it was technical, it could have been me. So just want to make that clear. And then also in the community engagement section, I felt like it wasn't very clear. It could maybe have been more clear if when they were answering, they would have labeled each question with like 1, 2, 3, 4. I thought that might have been a little bit more helpful. And they mentioned something about the public being involved in feedback. And I don't know, Robert might have mentioned this already, but they mentioned something about the feedback in choosing the productions for the next season, but it wasn't real clear if that was the next season or if the communication happened prior or after, or it just was unclear to me. And then the planning process seemed appropriate. And the budget was a little difficult for me to understand, but it was reasonable, I think. No names were mentioned, and it was only a vague mention of the experience of the project managers, I guess. It was kind of vague with their experience, and I thought that it could be a better application if they would have mentioned a little bit more of that. So. And then the history of the organization says a lot for this production. So I think that's good, and it honors the community of wanting live entertainment. So.
Thank you, Joe. Do any members of the panel, other panelists want to add comments to this? Go ahead, Joe.
I just had 2 things quickly. One, I sort of want to echo something Linda said in that she talked about the amount of experience in terms of the number of years that they've done this before, and that the organization has clearly done this before. I'd like to see a more direct line drawn between that experience and the number of times they've done that, and how that has informed them improving the process year to year, and how it will inform an improved process this year, specifically. Secondly, I know Robert mentioned briefly some mathematical discrepancies in the budget. I just wanted to note that this is an application that I would encourage, if they have the opportunity, to send it through a proofreader or have another person read over it one more time. There were several typographical errors that they may want to take a look at before they apply next time around.
Great, thanks. Annie, you want to add anything, or are you okay? Good, cool. Okay, if there are no other comments, then what we'll do is we'll give our panelists a minute to go ahead and finalize their score on this. While they're doing that, the next one is going to be, we're going to be dealing with the Pike County Commission for Arts Promotion and Education. That'll be the next one if you want to bring that up. Okay, and if everybody didn't get to see this, Brett just put on that we're really glad everybody's here, but just a heads up that we ask all our guests to remain on mute with their video turned off so that we can get the focus of the panelists. So if you are not muted or you don't have your video turned off and you are a guest visiting with us, please go ahead and do that. And thanks, Brett, for bringing that to my attention. I forget people come on and off throughout our panel. And also a reminder for our guests that, that this is in listening mode only, and please don't try to interact with the panelists in any way. And our next one, as we mentioned, our next one that we're going to be doing is the Pike County Commission for Arts Promotion and Education. Annie is our first reader on this one, and I'm going to turn it over to her. She'll be followed by Joe, who's the second reader. Go ahead, Annie.
Okay, this is for the Buffalo Trace, and it's kind of a city project. It's not clear if the committee includes other musicians or a cross-section of religious or sexual part of the community, and that might be an authenticity issue in terms of assuming that, you know, the whole community is Christian, because this is Christian music, which I don't have a problem with, but it would be helpful if we knew if they said there were other musicians that would be involved, but they didn't say who any of them were, what kind of music they did, and all the information we got about this project was only about this one artist, and I think it would have been helpful to see a cross-section of what was happening. There wasn't enough explanation, I think, of the whole thing. And in terms of community engagement, I think those same points kind of come up. It would also be helpful to know who some of those other participants were, performers. I think it's great that they're including music in this festival, and this is the second year they're doing it. But it would be more helpful to diversify those performers, and we don't know if they did or not. In terms of social media, the only thing I had was a Facebook page, and it would be helpful in spring to word about the festival and give the community a form. Oh, they didn't have a Facebook page, or if they did, it didn't say. And some other sort of social media that would help them advertise, and a way to ask for feedback or suggestions for the future. I was also surprised. I looked at the city site, and they don't have an events tab at the top of their page, and I thought, well, if it's a city event, it might be an easy way to help spread the word and get a wider diversity of people. In terms of management, I thought their information was okay. That's all I have.
Great, thanks so much, Ann. And Joe, your second reader on this one.
I had a couple of things to add to that. One, I was curious if they've had similar musical artists performing at previous festivals, and some discussion as to, if so, how that presence performance improved engagement and improved community attendance. Might speak to whether there was a reasonable expectation that this particular artist would increase the turnout at the event. So I was curious about that. I did note that they, in the IDEA section, they clearly illustrate the general accessibility of the festival, both via the location and the lack of cost, but was curious if there were any demonstrable efforts to reach underserved communities or to diversify participation. I think Annie spoke to that a little bit, but I wanted to draw a line under it. And finally, under the staffing, it does indicate here who will be in charge of volunteers. But I was curious how many volunteers they were expecting, how many would be needed in order to carry out the event. And I thought some more specifics in that area would have helped in evaluating their application.
Great, thanks, Joe. So Linda, Robert, either of you have any comments you want to add? Go ahead, Robert. And then Linda.
Yes, I had a a couple of comments along the way. It wasn't clear to me the process by which the artist was chosen, as to whether the choice of the artist was made by a committee or the mayor or the festival or the community or via some kind of survey. And then the partnership between the Buffalo Trace Festival and the city of Petersburg wasn't 100% explained to me as to how the relationship works between the two organizations. And if there was a bit more explanation about that, that might help with the first question I had. I noticed the same issue that Anne mentioned with having a Christian artist, but I did like that looking at passing in the out the budget, it was clear, given the fee charged by the artist and the request of the grant, that it was going to be that about $1,000 of the requested grant could be spent on making the local miscellaneous acts and the talent show that went along with that. The main act of the entire festival is a really well-known country duo, and I was curious as to why they hadn't asked for the grant to support that, which is kind of a more widely appealing in my mind than the artist which they did choose to make the application about. I had questions about again about volunteers. Please tell us more about the experience of the head of the volunteer committee, who else is on the committee, what their experience is, how often the committee meets, questions about volunteers, how many there are, and when do they meet, and how do they get their instructions, and just a few more details about those kinds of items. Thank you.
Great. Linda, you got anything you want to add?
Dan, for a minute, could I
Oh, Dan, go ahead.
What Robert said about the other artists that were mentioned, those artists were people that, it's my understanding that those artists were not necessarily coming to this festival, that they were people that Michael Cochran had been touring with his band in the past, not that they had been, but I might be wrong, but that's how I read it.
I think the Cochrane amount was something like $4,000. I don't have it in front of me, but then Thompson Square is the duo, the Grammy award-winning people, and they have a line item in there, and it's something like $18,000 for them to be part of the overall event. So okay. They are clearly the headliners.
Okay,
at least in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Linda, you want to add anything to this one?
I just had one thing that I thought might have made this application a little bit stronger, and I don't think anybody mentioned it, was the planning process was not very detailed. There was very little mentioned regarding community engagement and the activities, so I thought that might be more helpful if they included that in their planning process. And then the rest of what everybody said, I just sort of agree with, so no need in mentioning it again.
This is an application that would really benefit from further proofreading, for just having more people read over it. I think there are a few grammatical errors and items of that kind.
Got it. Great. And what we're going to be doing now is we'll let our panelists go ahead and update their scores. We have one more application on this panel that we're going to do, which is if you want to pull up Patchwork Central, that's next. And Annie and Linda will be doing that. We are running pretty close up to our next panel. So if you are an attendee and you're going to be joining us on the next panel when this one ends, we'll be beginning that one fairly soon afterwards. Before we do our last application here, I would just want to take a brief moment, if you are speaking with us on the, if you're listening to us, to thank all four of our panelists who have done this. This takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of time to review all these applications. So all of the discussion that you've been hearing today is because of that hard work. So with that, we're going to go ahead and do our last application of this panel, which is Patchwork Central here in Evansville, Indiana. And Annie, you're up first on that one, so unmute and it's over to you.
This was a very strong application. I like the fact that in their programming, they base their curriculum on the Search Institute's curriculum and try to respond to the interests, the individual interests of the people. They change their programming every year. One year they might focus on sculpture, another painting, even though they do a lot of different things through the summer. They do assess how the participants are connected and how much they like it. Let's see what else I had here. Oh, they're very even into storytelling and dance education, which I thought was a good lead in, and how to do some things other than visual arts. I don't think they had it in, oh yeah, they had guitar even in there, so they did music as well. In terms of engagement, the program's well marketed through Stale and newsletter. They have the web and different social media. I was wondering if they had other methods to create contacts in the neighborhood, because this is a neighborhood program, that don't have the internet or they aren't already on their mailing list. Let's see, I wondered if there were ever more people who were interested in the programming, the actual programming, and that they didn't have room. I wondered if they had a selection process or if they just always made room. You know, I wondered that might be helpful to know. The fact that they were very culturally diverse and they put in the numbers of everybody, they're very thorough on that. And they were also interested in showing that the arts are approachable and relevant. So they also have a space there that they can actually show the children's artwork, and so it's accessible to the rest of their community besides the kids and the parents that are in the program itself. They did say that in the coming year they wanted to build the outreach, so maybe that is what's, you know, the other point I brought up. Maybe they're attempting to deal with that, talking with the schools and things like that. They do ask for, I like the fact that they ask for feedback from the families to evaluate as well as the participant, and that they have an actual questionnaire. So that was helpful. Management, I didn't really have any suggestions. I think they must have an accountant. Thank you.
You're great. Linda, you want to finish us up today?
I just want to say that I agree with everything that Annie said, and I just want to reiterate that I thought it was really good in the management portion where they evaluate the program as it's going on and they make changes immediately that benefit the program. I think that's a good thing to do, especially since it's dealing with a lot of children. I think they have a clearly defined mission, history, and a purpose, and their program aligns with the budget. Financials look good. I think this is an overall strong application.
Great, thanks. And as we finish up, Joe, Robert, you want to add anything on Patchwork? Okay, Joe, no? Okay, Robert? Okay, great. Then we'll let our panelists go ahead and finalize their score on this and anything else they're doing. And on behalf of the Indiana Arts Commission, we're thrilled all of you were able to be with us today and to witness this paneling for Region 10, the regional arts partner, the Arts Council Southwestern Indiana. I'm going to now finish up our portion and turn it back over to Anne and or Paige if they have any final closing things, and if they have any instructions on those of us who will be continuing and going on to the next panel, if you want to join that. So Anne, I'll turn it over to you and Paige.
Brett, you can go ahead and stop recording.
I'll defer to
I'm doing
Paige
it real quick
and let her give instructions.
I'm gonna stop sharing
sounds
my
good.
screen real quick.
There you go. And then you can
then
stop recording.
Should we pause it or stop?
Oh yeah.
I think we should pause it.
No, you can hit stop. Go ahead and
Okay.
hit stop, because that'll keep